All right.
Who knew?
Coming to you live from Virginia Beach. Let's kick the tires and light the fires. Real estate investing and beer collide. This is Opportunity. Take it to the chorus. All right. So next increase in budget is for Soundman. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Opportunity. Thank you guys for coming out. It is summertime-ish. It feels like summer out there anyways. It's hot as heck, and the real estate market is pretty hot. So in my book, it feels like summer anyways. Who is here for the first time? Any newbies?
All right.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming out and joining us. How did y'all hear about the group? Online? Okay, sweet. You heard from us. And you? Same? Okay, awesome. Very good. Well, thank you guys for joining us. To anybody who has not been out here before, Opportunity is a group. We talk about real estate investing strategies, financing options and opportunities, and implementing those in our local real estate market. So we bring in industry experts and professionals like Mr. Glenn here, and we talk about relevant subjects. That's the goal, to basically talk about stuff that people are interested in if they're going to be doing real estate investing around here. And the other part of this group is networking. So if you're doing real estate, it's all about who you have around you. So there's a great group to just meet different people and see what they're doing, get some ideas, and potentially meet some partners in your next venture. So let's learn, let's network, and let's raise our glasses real quick, as we do. May your castle be secure and your cup overflowing. Cheers.
Cheers.
Ting. All right, so next month we're going to be doing Airbnbs in specifically Norfolk, but we'll be talking about Virginia Beach as well. We've got Matthew Fisher from Tesseract Rentals and EF Capital. He's about as knowledgeable on the subject as anybody, probably more than the cities are here. So he's going to be coming in. We're going to be meeting at the Bold Mariner Brewery in Norfolk. So that's going to be a great one. That one always has a big turnout. So please join us and probably get there a little bit early for that one if in case it gets filled up. And then I think after that, we're going to be doing multifamilies in the following month. I don't know who's speaking at that one yet, but got some good stuff coming. As we always say, hop on our Facebook page if you have something that you want us to talk about or somebody you want us to bring in. Just let us know, throw it in there. Any ideas you have, throw it in there. We want this to be kind of some give and take. It's not just about us and what we want to do. This is for you guys as well. So as you probably know, Sean is not here today. So we're sad to miss him. He's actually doing an REI presentation. Where's he at? Stanton, Virginia.
Wow.
So I think they're, what are you talking, wholesaling or what's his? Talking on wholesaling. So gonna miss him here, but glad he's out sharing his knowledge somewhere else too. We've got a great core of people. We got Ashley back here and Luna, marketing, and then all the behind the scenes stuff. Usually Vanessa's with us, but she's traveling this week. And we got JP over there helping out, keeping things going. So just much appreciation for everybody and all they do to keep this running and going. I think 4 years now. Is that 4?
It will be actually 5.
It'll be 5 years coming up.
Wow. How about that?
Which is crazy. So let's kind of roll right into it. What we're talking about tonight, I think we can go a lot of different directions. So Glenn is somebody that that has been a mentor to
Took
me,
his breath away.
a friend. Yeah. He's just, people ask all the time, hey, why did you go with a smaller brokerage company, not like a Keller Williams or a, Berkshire Hathaway, something like that when I got in the business. And the reason why was because I knew I wanted to do some real estate investing and learn about it and just learn about the other sides of real estate and the dynamics that real estate is. And so when I met Glenn, shouldn't say met, when I re-met Glenn to talk real estate, he kind of embodied that, a career of just learning and trying and doing, and 40 years of experience,
Give or take.
in the business, more than me. And I thought it would be really good for him to come in right now. So one of the things that it always amazes me is like he's got a story for everything. So because he's been in, where everybody's freaking out about, interest rates being
So high.
like over 5%.
Ooh.
And Glenn is telling me stories about, the 80s when they were in the high teens. And so it's always amazing to me to see that you can stay in this game and ride the roller coaster. You just got to make changes and adapt. And there's always ways to do it. And you've done it. And so I thought you would be great to have in. He's also a property management expert, if that's such a thing, but
I don't know what that is.
and just a real estate broker. And he's just done so much in the business. So I thought it would be great to have him up here. Tell us a little about himself, and we'll open up some Q&A at the end for any questions, and we'll just kind of rock and roll. So Glenn Russell over here, let's give him a round of applause.
Great to be here. How did I end up in real estate? We moved back from San Diego with the Navy. It became real clear after a short while that night carrier landings were not my career. And so I decided to get out of the Navy. So what do you do as an English major Navy pilot? Fly for the airlines? No, I didn't want to do that. Real estate. That looked simple. Look how easy it was to buy our house. We assumed somebody else's 7% VA gave him $30,000, call it a day. Doesn't everybody? So I got into real estate. And while I was part-time, still active duty, I sold like 3 or 4 houses. This is a cakewalk. And then I got out of the Navy. And in 6 months, I sold 1 house. I'm like, oh, this is getting interesting. Rates were creeping. Jimmy Carter was president. It's getting more interesting. The second 6 months, I sold 18 houses. I said, okay, there's a trend there. I like that. And then I started taking some commercial real estate courses to try to broaden it's a whole new language, right? When you get out of the Navy or something else you're doing, it's like, what are all these abbreviations these people are throwing around? And so when the rates went off the charts, fortunately, VA and FHA loans were fully assumable with no qualification. Here's $500, I'll buy your house. So I was taking in the multiple listings, and we'll get back to that someday. We would put the loan balance, due and payable, the interest rate, the PITI, how many years remaining, and so on. And I would shop those, and I would go to my buyer and say, if you buy this house and go to Navy Federal Credit Union and buy get a $19,000 second mortgage, your blended interest rate will be 8.5%, 9.5%, 10%, as opposed to going out and getting a 16 or 17. Well, duh. So that was really easy. So without that ability, I don't know what I would have done. I sure wouldn't have been here talking to you. So in any event, that's how you navigate things. You just adapt and you do your thing. So after about 2 or 3 years with a residential company, Goodman Seeger Hogan, which became Town, which became Berkshire Hathaway, I guess. That was the flow. Anyway, I was kind of looking around. I thought, there's got to be a better way. So this guy handed me a recruiting thing to start my own RE/MAX office. So I said, oh, that looks like a logical thing. So I started RE/MAX in the area in 1984, did that for 10 years. And by the end of the 10th year, I think we were 8th in the whole region, selling about 900 houses a year and managing about 400 rentals. And I had no idea what we were doing. I mean, it was a runaway freight train, and I'm hanging on for dear life. So at the end of that 10th year, I sold mine to another guy and stayed with him a while. And then we moved. My wife came home. We remarried. And she came home one day and said, hey, I bought a house in Ocean View. I'm like, why? Did you do that? So anyway, we moved Ocean View. And that's when we started Coastal Group in the jet ski rental place. And I got to know Ocean View. And of course, Ocean View, this is 04, 05, is exploding. And so we caught that freight train and just had a wonderful time. But then by 07, 08, 09, it was like, oh my God, what is going on? Everything's collapsing. It's a short sale. So we're doing short sales and blah, blah, blah. So kind of done a little bit of everything. I thought I'd just kind of hit some high notes on these notes that I gave to you. And toward the end is my email address. If anything in here you want to follow up on, I'd be happy to talk with you or email with you. So Let's just play with that for a bit. First of all, definition of a partnership, the worst ship that ever sailed. Try to avoid them if you can. And if you can't, do it with people that you really, really, really trust and make sure they put as much into it as you do. Because you know the definition of a joint venture, right? In the beginning, I have the experience, you have the money, and at the end of it, I'll have the money, you'll have the experience. That's a joint venture. So you want to be very careful with those. You can also use the Breeden technique. Ray Breeden was a mortgage banker. He started building and mortgage broker, and he started building some properties, and he would always borrow more than he could afford and more than he could collateralize. So they stopped asking him to sign collateral. And he just borrowed based on the value of the thing he was building. And he just kept building and building and building, and now he's a Breeden company and he's enormous. So just file that one away. I also put on here, remember Virginia is a tenants by the entirety state. So if you're married, and if you and your spouse own a property, make sure it's in a tenants by the entirety. That means you don't own it and she doesn't own it. And if either one of you go out and buy a brand new red Ferrari and then they repo it, the other person in the house is insulated from that. So the debt and it protects the other spouse. So never have your spouse sign anything with you if you're investing, if you could avoid it. And also always have your property and tenants by the entirety as where you live. That make sense, sir?
So don't have them on the deed at all.
For the investment property.
Yeah.
Correct. If you can avoid it, yeah, or somehow LLC them or something.
So does that affect them later on if you were to die or if some problem like that were to happen?
Just try to create barriers between everything you do. And here's another one of my favorites. This couple had a multifamily in Willoughby, and they thought, and it was highly dense on the property, more dense than it would normally be. So they bought the vacant lot next door to them and put it in the same title name. Joe Blow owns it here, Joe Blow owns it there. The city said, great, you were overly dense on this property, your lot line just disappeared, and you can't build a damn thing on that property. They're like, we just spent $150,000 for that thing. Well, enjoy your grassy open area. So never put them in the same name when they're adjoining. And if you get a double lot and you can split it, put them in two different names. Don't let the grandfather go away so long that the lot line disappears. So you buy a house that has a lot vacant next to it, and you buy it as one piece, break them in half. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how do you do that?
How do you do it?
Yeah, say you buy a house and there's an empty lot next door that comes with the house. How do you split it?
That's a tough one. And what you're going to want to do is hopefully they've taxed them separately. So they're two separate entities, and you go down there and you beat their brains in. You hire Eddie Bourdon or somebody from Joe Waldo's outfit or somebody and get out and beat their brains in and you split them. Because otherwise you can't build on that lot in many cases. And so the couple in Willoughby they went all the way to the state Supreme Court. And they finally got permission to sell it as a single family lot, and they lost their butt on it. So just duly noted, right? Don't do that one. We bought a small shopping center in Ocean View, my partners and I, the Chinellos. It's about midway down there, and it had a vacant lot adjacent to it. The guy wanted $1.3 million. We paid him $1.3 million for lots 1 through 5. Lot 6, we got free. The mortgage was on 1 through 5. We could have spun off the lot at the top of the market for $450,000. Durr. I mean, who knew, right? Well, we just, yeah, that's who. So it can be tricky. You want to be thoughtful about it. There are all kinds of things on that front page that can bite you in the butt. I mean, air rights. Who knew about air rights at Owls Creek? Well, one of my friends was an XO at Oceana of the fighter wing. He bought up all that property at Owls Creek, and he sold the damn air rights back to the Navy. It's like, dude, that's like triple dipping. It more than paid for the land. And he can still develop it, but he doesn't have the air rights anymore. Who cares? He didn't want to fly out of there anyway. I mean, you just sometimes don't know. The Southern Railroad track that the city, for some unknown reason, didn't put the metro on. To my knowledge, Dominion Power is still paying Southern Railroad for the right-of-way to run their towers up and down that thing. So land has incredible odd values that unless you treat it like a Rubik's Cube and keep looking at all the different patterns, you could totally miss the value of a property. When I was first coming up in the business and people would buy these strategic corners out in the middle of nowhere, they'd put a jungle golf or a drive-in or something on it. Like, what a crappy business model. They were just holding the land until Walmart or CVS or somebody came along and said, I'll give you $1 million something for it. Oh, that's why they did it. friend of mine had Keys Business College, went up to Laurel, Maryland, and a residential real estate agent was helping him find a space to lease. She said, "You want to make sure to get an option to purchase on this property." He said, "I will never in a million years buy this." "Don't worry, just get the option to purchase with a price." He did. 5 years later, somebody came along and said, "I will pay you double to buy this corner." Okay. That's where he made all his money, not from the business college. That was just the occupant. Well, okay. Land with buildings to demolish. Learn this one the hard way. Don't demolish the building too soon. Keep it rented. Don't let that grandfather, improper use expire, as I did. And then the land is useless. And then Bank of Commonwealth went bust. And then they called the loan property because Southern Bank now had it. Those took the loan. I bought it back out of foreclosure, paid them off, then paid them off the balance left over from the foreclosure, and took a bath on it. I mean, it was just a mess. So anyway, be careful with land. Crazy deals. Whew. Well, there's one on page 2, Cello Avenue lot. That was my alligator. Land is an alligator. People will dump crap on it. They'll use it for uses you don't find appropriate. People used to get in there and do fishing, and they set up their tents and have a wonderful time on my property every weekend in the summer. Didn't charge them for it. The Janela Center I mentioned. How to buy. Now this, I want you to think about this, and our lender friends might be able to give us some insight on this. Can you, in this escalating interest rate market, now go back and buy by assuming and applying to assume somebody's 2.5%, 2.25%, 2.75% interest rate? That has tremendous value. I mean, literally a 5% versus a 2.5% is a 100% increase in the interest cost. Well, that would be a good reason to try to take over that lower interest rate. So figure out a way to do that. And, you're subject to, they're sort of okay, land contracts, contract for deed, but tax liens can sneak in there and other weird stuff can happen. So I don't know, it's something you'd want to do with an attorney. But there's got to be a way to figure that out.
You're going to need documents this time to assume a loan.
Again?
You're going to need documents this time to assume a loan.
Yeah.
A lot of documents.
That deep, more than applying for a new loan
And
typically.
that second loan, I mean, it's just
It's awful. Yeah, it's awful, but it's worth it. I bought a number of properties under financing, and I would typically do, a 5-year term is just it's not quite long enough to get out of the next curve. So I would usually do 7 or 10-year terms, a 30-year amortization or 20-year amortization, but I do at least a 7-year to kind of make sure I could get through whatever was going on in the roller coaster and I could come out the other side.
So would you just agree to have a monthly payment to them and then you would refinance out of that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
5 to 7 years?
I see that coming up a lot more, the owner financing, but companies doing it. There's only one here right now, but what I like about it is they give the option for a home buyer to own their home and it doesn't go to a conglomerate. But would like to know more, I do think that's a great game to play.
Well, it is a game, and I think it's a scam in many cases. But let me throw this one at you. There used to be a newspaper writer, if you're old enough, you remember him, named Robert Bruss, and he would write about real estate. But one of my favorite things that he talked about was a lease option. So in the hot market of California, he would go rent your house from you on a long-term lease for 7 years and guarantee to pay you X with permission to sublet it, which he would sublet for X plus, and he would have a price within that 7-year window that he could buy your property from you. You're like, oh, that sounds good. That's a good number. Well, meanwhile, the market's going like this. You've agreed to this, and he makes that with a lease option with an option to purchase. Good thought of that one. I mean, that one's a squirrel. But what a great concept. He made a lot of money doing that. So there it is. And that would be one way to take advantage of somebody's 2.25% interest rate. Some elderly person, or I guess if they did a reverse mortgage, you probably couldn't, they can't rent it out, can they, with a reverse mortgage? That,
Occupy anything that's a
yeah,
primary when it's a
yeah,
primary.
that's kind of weird. I much prefer single families versus HOA condo type properties just because of all the restrictions. I had a condo that I assumed from somebody, FHA at 8.5% in Green Run. So it was a condo fees and the HOA fees. That was a nuisance, but it was a good deal. So I made some money on it. I really like to do upfront, especially if a young military couple and I'm helping to buy a house, is let's do some cheap stuff up front. Let's pull the termite, get an electrical inspection, pull the insurance clue reports, which you can call USA or whoever you're getting your insurance through and say, I want to insure this property Can you do it? What are the problems? So they can pull a comprehensive loss underwriting exchange and tell you whether there's been a fire, a tornado, or whatever. And they're going to say the insurance is going to be 3 times what you thought it was going to be. It's like, whoa, what is wrong with this house? Well, that is like a no cost, low cost process before you go spend. As I did on that crappy condo, I was going to refi it. For some reason, Wells Fargo, after my $650 appraisal and whatever else I spent, said, oh, this is not a good time to refi. I'm like, okay, I'll just pay cash for the damn thing and forget about it. Zoning, conditional uses, all that kind of stuff, really weird. We helped a number of the folks that were with PCL Enterprises that put in the extra tunnels on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel. And these poor guys were Canadians. They came across the line and lost 40% of their dollar at the time. They went to Denver and had put down payments and inspections on properties there when they said, change their mind, we want you to go to Virginia Beach and buy a house. So these are A, engineers, anal, B, beat to hell by their dollar, C, pissed off because they're not living in Denver. I'll help you. So we helped these poor guys, but we had to go to the city and look at the master street and highway plan on every house that they were going to buy because they wanted to know exactly what was going in their neighborhood. But I learned a lot, and we sold them all houses, so it was a good thing. Condos, down at the bottom of page 2. I can think of several cases. One is Mill Dam up by Lynn Haven Middle School, where they had massive assessments, I think $7,000 or $80,000 per house because of the drive-it that they put on. So everybody in there, even if they didn't have a problem, had to equally chip in $60,000 to $70,000 to do that. And Mowbray Arch is Smith Creek. That used to be a swamp. They filled all that in. Chesapeake, or the Chrysler Museum. And then there's the Mowbray Arch condos, and there were like 7 buildings, and I sold 2 friends in there. And even though their buildings were rock solid, 2 other buildings in their thing were shrinking and settling and cracking, and their assessments were like $60,000 to $70,000 a whack. So condos can be fun that way. I mentioned the lease with option thing in the Keys Business College, so we hit that one. Contingencies, some crazy stuff. One of the PCL guys that we sold a house to, he bought it from a rapper, and that was a crazy situation all by itself. But his house was like this on a court off of Entrada in Lagomar, and the Virginia Power easement went right through the middle of the house. Nobody had caught that after 2 sales except our title guy did. I'm like, God almighty. So we had to get Virginia Power to vacate the easement and blah, 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 blah. But I mean, just crazy stuff like that. So, yeah, no kidding. Things that survive the deed can be interesting. There could be deed restrictions. I mean, there's some weird racial deed restrictions that are just illegal and irrelevant now. But I mean, you'll see deeds that show a lot. Had a god awful deed about no black people could buy the lot. Like, seriously, what a world. Anyway, but it's irrelevant now, fortunately. Why don't we just throw it open? Is there anything on here that kind of rings your bell? You got a situation you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, has anybody got any questions? And we can come around with a microphone and
Or I can repeat it.
or we can repeat it. Yeah. Either way.
All right, you first.
I thought that highway, city engineering, Chesapeake Bay, pretty eye-opening thing. How do you learn more about that? Like, especially for like, oh, Amazon's gonna go here, oh, this is gonna happen there. Like, where did you find those records? Where's that resource?
Okay, that's a great question. Typically you go into planning departments and you say, okay, I need to talk to somebody who can really tell me what's going on. And I know you might have some things private. You can't tell me the who, but you can tell me the what. And I think I might have put in here the link for the Southeastern Freeway. You may remember, if you're old enough, they were going to blaze the Southeastern Freeway all the way up through Southern Virginia Beach from like Elbow Road. It would come across Elbow Road, and I think it would connect Greenbrier to Corporate Center down here. It was a great idea, and the only reason that I know of that they didn't do it is because some Ghent liberal, what's the word I want, environmentalists decided that there would be too many canebrake rattlesnakes killed in the process, and they stopped the freaking freeway. That they had paid millions of dollars for rights of way and planning and all this other stuff. We don't have too many rattlesnakes to be dead. So that incredible highway that should have been built wasn't built. So there's a good example.
I think the behind Lagomar had the same thing come up with the property.
Yeah, with Nemo.
Yeah, with Nemo coming through there.
They're looking at blazing that through, and people are going, too many. I know. Well, all right, let's talk about that one. That's a good example. wetlands, when it became a thing, you could actually buy the rights to develop this piece of property. If 20 miles over that way, you could buy wetlands, preservation areas. I forget what the name of it is, but you could actually buy the rights to move this moisture way the hell over there. And it would meet the requirements of the city to meet their wetlands thing. And you could do the same thing kind of with historical tax credits, that bizarre thing that people do when they'll, remodel a property and sell somebody in Timbuktu the tax credits, but get the cash from that to make the deal work. I mean, there's some funky stuff that you can do.
You have a question?
All right, so my specific question is like with the fire damage homes, I'm sure you've seen them on the market. What are some of the issues with buying a rehab that was previously burned out?
Well, that's a great question. I was talking with a gal the other day who would go out and evaluate properties for this guy that would buy them to flip. And one he sent her into, it had some fire. She opens the front door, and I mean, the whole place is just scorched. It was a tear down. So anything that's been rehabbed like that, if you get the Clue report, you can find out it had the fire. I was looking at this beautiful home in Suffolk one time that was about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and it was an incredible price. And then in the remarks, the agent had written, structural engineer has certified that the structure is fine. I'm like, what's that mean? So I zeroed out on the aerial, and I could see the swath that the tornado that went through Suffolk a number of years ago had gone right next to the house. That's why I had that remark. And it might have been a good deal, but I wasn't about to buy it.
It's like something with the structure.
Yeah, literally.
And I think anytime you see something like
the
that.
other one she was telling me about was he sent her in to look at this house in Pelican Dunes, and it's foreclosed and it's all winterized. And she opens the door, goes up to the third. Or no, she couldn't go, so her broker went for her. He opens the door to the third floor bathroom, and there's the dead man that owned the house laying dead in the bathtub. Been there a while. Closed the door nicely. Ran the hell out of there.
Did they buy the house?
No, they should have. I mean, it's a good deal. People are dying to get in there, right? Some odor conveys with the property.
So I'm a local contractor here, and I had a client ask me today about property management stuff. They have a property manager that they don't like. You're in contract. They're trying to figure out how can they break that contract. Does it have to be something in the contract, or?
Yes, and yes. No, we use, for example, the Virginia Association of Realtors forms. The local RAIN multiple listing service has the forms, and then there's any other numbers of them out there. But typically they'll have some termination language. And in commercial real estate, if you own this building and I lease this building, my fee structure can be a lien, like a mechanic's lien against that property. There's a formal mechanism for that in commercial real estate. Well, in residential, we don't have that. But if you own this house and I lease this house for you with a management agreement, that tenant, that lease is mine. And I have the right to collect on that. So even if you sell it mid-lease, in theory, I still have the right to collect from you, the seller, that money that I would be due. And I certainly have the right to collect the money if you decide to fire me and go to that agent over there. Do we do that routinely? Nah. But every time that tenant pays rent, there's And so every single person in our office listens in on this. It's now Zoom classes, of course, but we listen in on that. We studiously go through what he recommends. We take all the Virginia residential lease materials and addendums, and we update them to go with that stuff. Because it's just, I mean, if you, for example, somebody asked me today about, maybe it was here, about what if you evict somebody yourself and you just throw them out on the street? Well, that self-help eviction in residential can be massive fines. Tenant lives there for a long, long time, and you're just going to take it on the chin if they take you to court. And then with commercial, you can do and that's a whole nother subject is, I mean, we just took over a bunch of really kind of mediocre Class C commercial rentals, which are a breeze. Well, Tim might say otherwise because he's doing it, but they're relatively straightforward. But the tenants typically are paying increases in the taxes, the insurance or increases in the insurance, routine maintenance on the property, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, it is just painless compared to, the residential bit. So that's something to consider. And if you can take a piece of, property like this thing and have the insight to say, how could I break this up into 4 condos or do whatever. And I wonder if the parking came with it. That parking has enormous value. I talked to a RE/MAX guy in Boston one time, and he just bought a townhouse for like $175,000, which I thought was a lot of money at the time. He said, yeah, I sold off the parking in the back for $100,000. I'm like, you what? He's in Boston. The parking was worth like $50,000 per slot. I didn't know that. Did you know that you can go to Arizona and you can buy tax receipts on this property? I can buy the tax bill, and if the guy doesn't pay it, I'm guaranteed at the last time I checked a 9% rate of return. And if he forecloses, I have first priority on the property over the mortgage company. It's like
Over the mortgage company?
tax liens take priority over mortgages, don't they? Yeah. And here's another one. Don't ever buy a property without checking to see if there's an IRS tax lien on it. There's a 120-day right of rescission for the IRS to reach in and say, you just paid too little for this property, this $80,000 property, and we're going to take it back for $80,000. And 119 days later, you're like, but I just put $100,000 of renovations into that thing. Thank you. Yeah. IRS tax liens. They take priority over everything. And they have the right of rescission. They have the right of rescission for 120 days to buy that property back from you because you underpaid for it. Oh, a tax lien. Somebody didn't pay payroll tax or some crazy.
Would title be able to find that for you?
The question was, can title find that for you? And yes, and that, I mean, for God's sake, and okay, let's talk title for a minute. You got residential title, Stewart title. Oh yeah, they'll go back one owner. They don't care if you do a survey or not. The hell with that. I want a commercial title search, which costs what, $10 or $15 more? Does somebody here know the actual number? It's like $10 or $15 more to have the same search done, go back 100 years and tell me what's wrong with this title. You wouldn't believe what's wrong with title. Case in point, off a military highway, I was trying to sell my son-in-law and daughter a house. It had a 3.25% interest rate. We were going to hand these people some money, fully qualified. We get way into this thing. Here's the piece of property. There was a farmhouse on it. Joe and Ann own the property. They divorce. Ann leaves. Joe refinances it. She's still on the title, doesn't sign the refinance, and they foreclose. The company that I trust to do legal work forecloses, doesn't realize that Ann was on the title. They sell it to a developer who subdivides it into 6 houses, builds 6 houses on this property with massive title problems. And we go to close and we're like, we can't close on this. The Ann had moved to Georgia, died, had about 30 missing heirs scattered all over the United States, and Stewart Title had the thing, and they would eventually make it right. But in my lifetime, I mean, R.G. Moore built some townhomes off of Holland Road someplace. Every townhome going down the street was 1/2 off the lot, all the way down the street. You imagine you're the guy in the middle and your mortgage company, you were like, what the hell? So they had to resurvey, replat, re-record, everything, and that must have cost a bloody fortune to do that. So, I mean, there's just crazy crap like that. So I think your question was, how do you find the crazy crap? Title companies, and get them to do a full commercial all the way back to when the king granted them the property. I totally believe in owner's title. There are 2 levels of owner's title. You got the regular, and then you've got the kind that if you want to put it into an LLC, a corporation or whatever, and it appreciates dramatically in value, covers that. Well, the regular doesn't. So if you roll it from yourself into an LLC, it's still you in the chain of title. They sue the LLC, it's you, who cares? But that appreciation is an owner, I would want the web-based product so I can literally, it's transparent. I can go in there and see everything. We used to have a lady who would watch us punching in the numbers on her property. She'd be hawking it, 100 miles away. What kind of handymen do they have, or women? I mean, are they like local old timers that don't charge you $1 million just to go out and take care of something stupid? Or do you have to hire, some super duper plumber, electrician guy to charge you a fortune? I mean, we do have that guy. We've been very fortunate. We hired a retired master chief who can fix anything. I mean, if he can keep a helicopter in the air, he can fix anything. So that's a great question, though. I mean, that's when my first wife and I were going to buy a property on 73rd Street, one house off the ocean, and at the time, Hudgens and Atkinson were kind of the big dogs as far as resort management. They wanted 17% management fee. I'm like, that's ridiculous. Well, wait a minute. They're out there picking up the trash on Saturday. They're taking those calls 24/7. They're letting people in and out of the house. They got the cleaning crews. They're doing all this crap that I wouldn't want to do. It's like, ooh, that's not a bad price. So what are you getting for it? Will they give you multiples? Will they bring you properties from time to time? I mean, what give you advice? We've got owners. We went from 480-ish units. We had over 120 of our owners bailed out during the last 2 years because of the weird economy, and the prices were sort of up. It's like, A, you're going to take a and then B, you're missing out on all the inflationary trend going on right now. So just dumb. But they panicked. What are you going to do? So we sold them, didn't we?
Yeah. I like that part.
That part went all right. Alex did a fantastic job. And he held their hand and kept him calm. Now, I'm a great believer in the 1031 tax deferred exchange. The Starker family owned Woodlands out in the west in Washington or something, and somebody from the government said, "We're taking your land, here's your money." And they were like, "We don't want it. We don't want this." They went all the way to Supreme Court, the Starker family did, to have the right to reinvest that money. So at the time it became, I'll trade my log cabin in Appalachia for your, resort, whatever, in somewhere else. But then after a while it became, that's too messy. What if we just use qualified intermediaries so the cash from the sale remains up there until I purchase the next thing? You have 45 days to identify up to 5. And after that 45 days, you have another 135 days to close on 1 or more of the 5. Well, I've used that one 7 times personally. I mean, the house we live in was a 3 properties, 1 in Ocean Lakes, 1 on Atlan's, and something else. Helped me buy that house in East Beach, which I bought in 04 and we finally moved in 2 years ago. Go figure. What's the rush? But I'm a great believer. I mean, that a tax dollar, if you're going to take a tax dollar and you're going to knock 30% off the top of it, why'd you do that? You don't have to do that, because unless they dramatically change the tax laws, unless my estate equals, is 11.2, does somebody know, for a married couple? It's some massive number.
13.1.
Yeah, a big number. Unless my estate equals more than that, whatever I paid for this house, my mom and dad and I bought a house, I love this one, on Sir Wilfrid Circle in Kings Grant Landing. Powell Construction was building it. Alice Pyle with Pyle Realty was the agent. We bought it, and the builder leased it back from us as a model for 2 years. That was a sweet deal. So whenever you can buy a model from a builder that's on a long-term project, buy the model from the builder. It's a great, great way to get a nice property and have no wear and tear to speak of on the property. Anyway, we bought it from them. We had a very low basis. I had 1%. My mom and dad had the other. When my dad died, his portion stepped up to market value. When my mom died, hers stepped up to market value. And I bought it from my brothers and sisters out of the estate, but there was no tax whatsoever. Isn't that awesome? I mean, when it steps up to market value at the time of sale, or at the time of death rather, is what the new market value is. All that is forgiven. All that, the depreciation, recapture, everything forgiven. So it's don't ever sell. Trade up, trade up, trade up, trade up, divide, buy more, refi, buy more, don't
Sorry.
sell.
I didn't get what you said.
All right, well, let's run through a $100,000 house. I got a $100,000 house. Well, let's use one I paid 48 for on Lenox in Ocean View. Paid 48 for it. In the boom, I refied out 80,
Okay,
tax-free,
yeah.
tax deferred. Let me rephrase that. Thought I'd use it to buy some other property, which I did. Still got the property. I could refinance it again for, it's probably worth 150. Again, take that out, tax deferred. But if I sell it, I'm going to get killed, because my basis was the 48 plus whatever I've done to improve the basis. So maybe call it round numbers 50. Then I've depreciated out 27.5 years worth for all the building value. So chip, 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 chip. So now my basis is here, and I've got this to sell it. So I'm going to recapture all the depreciation at full ordinary income rates, and then pay capital gains rates, which is now what, 25 and 5? Is that what it is? It's too much, whatever it is, on the rest of it. So my wife and I just sold a property like that I'd owned with my mom in Ocean View, and we pulled out $175,000, I think, on the thing. But I'd left $35,000 sitting over here because IRS is going to, and we set it up for 1031. But my wife's like, you know what? I don't want one more property right now. We're done.
Do you have to restructure the exchange every time you add another pair or add another?
Do you have to restructure?
Yeah, the 1031 exchange just have to be restructured.
You have to be the exact same entity has got to buy that's sold. So you can't add anybody to it until later. You can do later.
But if there's like an addition through a death or something like that, let's say Joe Smith passed away and it went to Jeff Smith, like, is that exchange still valid?
Well, let's take that one. So a couple of the properties I was in on with my mom, like that's at Wilford and the one on 21st Bay, she was the primary borrower because we used her. So that meant it was not a debt on my statements, which is useful. I put the cash in, she did the loan. So there was no debt against me in that regard. When she died, as the co-deed person, it automatically transferred, a family transfer cannot be a due on sale acceleration of the mortgage. You must pay off the mortgage. They tried to do that. Mr. Cooper, Nation Star, ever so friendly, tried to jam that down my throat, and I jammed it right down their throat. I said, you can't do that. It's a family transfer. I was already on the deed. Go to hell. So, A, if you sell something with a 1031, you must buy with the exact same entity. A. B, if you're going to add somebody to a deed, talk to a lawyer about estates and taxes and gifting and all that, because you might trigger a really big tax event. So just be careful with that. Does that make sense? Sir?
When you say with the same entity, would that count if let's say your LLC is under a holding company, which is owned by a trust?
It doesn't matter. Whatever is on the title, our 21st Bay property was Dos Casas LLC. That had to be the entity that bought the next one, which was another reason my wife didn't want to use it again.
And everybody that was in that LLC had to do the same.
Yes. Although that's a great legal question. I don't know the answer to that. And the only reason to do LLCs to me is they're just a little simpler than a corporation, but ideally do it with a single taxpayer on the title and maybe add your wife later, your spouse or your partner or whatever later. But by doing a single taxpayer, you don't have to file a separate K-1. You can just file under your social, which makes it eminently easier. If you're not going to do it the easy way, I don't know that I would do it unless you really got a lot of liability out there, because it's just a pain in the ass every year to file that extra thing. Does that make sense? I see a couple of you nodding your head. And then, of course, S Corp's the same thing. I mean, LLC and an S Corp are handling same. And I've used many S Corps. Howard Sykes, God bless him, done a terrific job for me. And I've done leases with S Corps so that I didn't sign the lease and I didn't guarantee the lease, and that S Corp signed the lease. And with 2 cases in the downward crunch of 88, 89-ish, we gave them back to the landlord after a couple of years. Said, those LLCs are broke. See ya. So always try to create barriers around your liability and all of that risk. Never have your spouse sign anything. Don't guarantee anything. Just keep it simple. Dave?
In your experience with new landlords, what are kind of those top things to watch out for?
If you're a new landlord,
Yeah, which I'm about to be, so that's why.
have cash in reserve. Think long-term. One guy that we know had us put in a really crappy tenant that we recommended against, and the tenant proved to be really crappy, and it's been a major hassle getting them out of there, and it's our fault.
What have you learned over the years with screening?
Have cash in reserve.
I mean, is credit more important than previous property manager and landlord phone calls? Like, what are those?
I would do all the above. Now, there's a company out there
I
called,
think evictions are like
well,
the big red flag.
they may be the big red flag, but there will come a time soon when a source of income, whether or not it's Section 8 or whatever, and also I think what almost came out of legislature this time is you cannot hold against somebody if they had a bad credit event during the pandemic. Well, who didn't have a bad credit event? I mean, half of them did, right? So now the good news is there are ways to do workarounds like Section 8. You have to consider them, but if you can't get an inspector out there in 14 days, you don't have to do it. So don't get the inspector out there in 14 days. I mean, they're slow, they're bureaucratic, they can't get their act together. Works for me. So Patty Robertson, Dave spoke with recently, is a phenomenal property manager. She does Section 8 all day long and knows the ropes and knows how to call the Section 8 case manager and say, hey, the boyfriend's doing drugs in the back bedroom. Boom, they're gone. And that voucher is gold. They'd be stupid to let it go.
They're giving 110%.
Wow. Nice. So it's not a bad thing, but it's guaranteed rent and guaranteed damage. So, it's a great combination. What else? We stimulating any brain cells? Yes, sir.
For the times you did seller financing, for when you had someone who either didn't know what that was or they weren't initially receptive to it, how did you approach them or convince them that they should go that seller financing route?
It's interesting. Many times they thought it was a great idea because they didn't want that lump of cash because either their family be grabbing at it, and it one occurred to me that I'll talk about in a minute, and they just wanted that nice steady monthly income because God bless Elizabeth Falconer. That was probably the first rental house that I bought at 3005 Edinburgh Drive in Kings Grant. It was a 3-bedroom one on a little lake. And I think I paid her 56 for it. And she owner financed for 48. And underneath it was a 7.5% FHA that had like 7 or 8 years to go. So 7 or 8 years into the property, I get a check from the FHA out of the mortgage insurance pool that they didn't have any losses. I'm like, the hell is this? And it was like $780 or something. And they don't do it anymore because there usually are losses out of the mortgage insurance pool. But anyway, that was a sweet little deal. And she went to a nursing home in Stanton or someplace, and I sent the check there, and it went from being worth 56 to being worth a lot more. I sold it to Joyce by Reeves. It was my tenant. I sold it to the tenant. But so she thought it was a great idea. And the one on Sylvie, Sylvie was an elderly couple. He was in poor health. They were in Whidbey Island, Washington, Oak Harbor, and they just didn't want to do all the maintenance. The house had a ton of maintenance that was due, and they just didn't have any money. I said, well, I'll be happy to take it off your hands. How about $6,000 on owner finance it? Okay.
So do you go to a broker, like, hey, they're financing it, but I still need a full loan to purchase the house, or how does that?
I'm sorry, I missed.
How did that work, like, between, you still go to a broker and say, hey,
Basically paying them in installments. So they get a mortgage on the property, and I paid it off, I guess, or refied it or did something. They needed the money. That's what it was. I just paid it off. But anyway, the balance was down to like 48 from whatever it was, 7. They were really getting elderly and could barely understand anything. I said, okay, well, I just want you to verify everything. I'll pay you to do this. Sit these people down, explain what the payoff value is and why they're getting it, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, but it was just, it's a piece of paper. Now let's talk paper. I mean, one of the things I learned from that course was more money better than less money. I did a couple for my Remax agents. I had a lot of second mortgages on property that had a yield of 11%. And I discounted it so it had a yield to me, a cost to me of 9%. Was a 9% that I discounted, and it gave me an 11% yield. So I bought this crummy little Windship Cove or Windmill something or other in Green Run, second on the thing. And we used to also pay off a guy's, truck loan to enable him to qualify to get his whatever mortgage, include that in the value of the sale. I mean, just wheel and deal, make it happen. And then back to the owner financing thing, I just sold a property with owner financing. I really didn't want the capital gain. So now every time I get the mortgage payment, some of it's interest, that'll be ordinary income. The remaining principal, some of it's recaptured depreciation, some of it's capital gain. It's like, whatever. It was that property in Green Run I didn't like anyway. So now I'm not paying the condo fee and the HOA fee, and I'm getting the same amount of net. So it's like, suits me.
Awesome. Well, guys, let's thank Glenn for joining us tonight.
Alex, sorry. We got a couple over here. So one person asked, where can I meet up and get mentored? I'm active duty in Norfolk. So here.
You're at the right place.
Come to
Yeah.
Opportunity. There's plenty of people who
Yep.
do
Yeah.
plenty of things for sure. And then Trig always is great. There's some great guys there, but yeah.
Well, let me jump in on that too, because when we bought the Hansons and the Henry Hanson Tuckers, at least 50% of those homes were military families that bought the home, kept the home, rented the home, and decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep the home. So now they've got a home that somebody else is paying for. They're making money on the mortgage that might even be paid off. And it's building wealth. And so there was a company in Colorado Springs called Real Estate something or other. Anyway, they would talk to young military couples at Peterson Air Force Base nearby about buying not the perfect White House with a perfect picket fence, but instead buying the home that's kind of plain vanilla, but it's in a great path of progress. You'll make excellent rent, decent schools and neighborhood, and keep it and build wealth. And nobody had ever used the word wealth with a guy that was an E2 in the Air Force. So he's like, oh, keep it. Wow, what a concept. So suddenly as a buyer agent, that takes the pressure off of having to find the perfect house with a white picket fence. Instead, let's just buy something that's okay. You're Randall. Well, not Randall, you're Gilpin. He stole a house on Gilpin. He does very well.
That was a good one.
He did well. A 4.2 for 82. Is that what you paid?
3.2 for 90.
Okay, close. It was a good deal.
Got to get a couple of them at some point. right?
Every once in a while. And so your marketing, in theory, as an investor, do what the Indians did, take the river with the fish in it and put the sticks in the river that bring the fish to your side of the bank and stand there with a spear. And when you see one you like, stab it. Right?
Sounds so easy.
It is. But you got to pull the trigger once in a while. Sometimes it's ready, fire, aim.
I know you were saying like in 05 and 06 when you sold a lot of stuff, like was in, you were able to buy in different times. Were there times where you were just like, we just need to be acquiring stuff, or we need to be liquidating stuff, or
It's always a good time to buy property. And you buy it where your profit's on the front end, which guarantees the profit will be on the back end. And if you can make cash flow from it, all the better. If you're in a high tax bracket, who cares if you make positive cash flow? Your principal's cash flow, it comes out of this pocket, goes in that pocket, but it's happening. Your appreciation's cash flow. So I don't know, just buy smart and try to get cash flow out of it and think long term.
nice.
Is there other questions?
Another one? Ashley?
Yeah, one more. How, for the people that are online, how can they get into contact with you?
Why don't we have you post the
Yeah, we can
notes,
put-
maybe?
Okay.
Scan these?
Yeah. So if you're online, then check out our public Facebook group or public Facebook page, and we'll post all of the information that was talked about today.
And everybody here, he's got business cards up front as well.
So got a great team. There's really terrific people working in our office. We're small. Try to keep it personal. Do the right thing. I'm an Eagle Scout. Macon's a almost Eagle Scout. This guy would be the definition of an Eagle Scout.
But not an Eagle Scout, but
Whatever.
Honorary.
Honorary.
honorary
Thank
Eagle
you.
Scout. There we go. Well, I appreciate you coming on. You've been
It's
a
been
great
fun.
mentor to me, and just all the stuff that you shared with me over the years. So I'm just glad that you were able to share that with everybody as well.
Real
Thank
estate
you.
is my favorite subject.
Yeah.
All right,
Awesome,
well, thank
guys.
you for
Let's
coming.
Give it up for Glenn. Thank you, guys. We'll be here a little bit longer. Let's network, grab a beer before they shut down, and just thank you guys for joining us tonight.